I'm bringing Evan Lazarus on from T3 Live. Now, Mr. Lazarus has been in the equity trading business for 16 years. 11 years ago, he took a managing director position at Sperling Enterprises. Now, at Sperling Enterprises, Mr. Lazarus, along with Mr. Redler, managed the firm's traders and developed its highly successful training program. Now, his core competency lies in understanding the difficult psychological aspect of trading and his ability to mentor other traders. Now, Mr. Lazarus became a partner in Sperling Enterprises in 2006. In 2007, he helped facilitate the merger between Nexus Capital and Sperling Enterprises, creating the T3 entities known today as T3 Live and T3 Trading Group. Now, Mr. Lazarus' career and methodologies are chronicled in The Modern Trader. Wall Street traders reveal their formula for success. And Mr. Lazarus currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer at T3 Live and as a managing partner of T3 companies. Now, he also currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of T3 Live and as a managing partner of the T3 company. So before going further, let me introduce to Evan Lazarus once again from T3 Live. Evan, you go ahead, take it away.
All right. I just want to make sure that we're good here on the sound. Everybody can hear me, no problem. All right. So, yeah. All right. So we're good. First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it very much. And I've actually been popping into some of the webinars over the course of the day and did some really interesting presentations. You know, what I wanted to talk about today to everybody is a little bit about my experience. And I think my experience is my goal with this presentation is that I hope that I can, you know, it's not about necessarily a technical indicator or some sort of system or moving average or anything like that. It's really about, you know, why people fail and as traders and ultimately, you know, how I was able to sort of turn the corner. And so anyway, I want to take you on a little bit of a story, more so than necessarily any indicator or oscillator or any, you know, fancy technical trick. Because my story's real, and I find that, you know, when I kind of share with everybody, it is can be a very valuable and enriching experience. And I told this story, you know, and it's really the first step in what I do as an educator, because not only have I spent the last, you know, 17 or 16 years, I mean, God, the time flies, as a trader, but I've built a very large business around my experiences, and I took my own personal trading and I've leveraged it into a business called T3, and we have a relatively large broker-dealer, and T3 Live is an education firm that I spend pretty much all of my time working on. That being said, I want to talk about my experience and how my journey led me to where I am today, and I think it probably, I'm hoping, will hit home for some of you, and maybe many of you. So like I said, I began trading, you know, here's a little bit about me. I'm CEO of T3 Live. I've been trading since the late 90s. I am from outside Philadelphia, and I'm a product of the dot-com era, and I'm not going to spend time talking about the dot-com era. You've heard the story a million times, you know, young guys getting rich, you know, making money while it just was handed out on the money tree. And I was, you know, a part of that environment, and that's really my first foray into trading. And it was a you know, a time that I'll never forget, but also a very, very, looking back in hindsight, everybody's a genius, but it was actually the worst part of my career. Even though it may have been potentially the most lucrative, it was also the most devastating for me. And the devastation wasn't necessarily that I was one of the many that, you know, made a lot of easy money but then lost a lot of easy money. I was not a part of the losing culture. I was able to survive and sustain myself. But what I realized, you know, what I realized post, you know, dot-com boom or bust was that I actually knew very little about my craft. Here I was a few years in, you know, having amassed, you know, some sort of, you know, living and personal fortune for myself, and I really didn't even understand my business. It was like the way I explain to people, it's like calling yourself a professional painter, but not really knowing how to use a paintbrush. And the whole thing to me, you know, became a facade. And when you live a life where, you know, you're making money and you think you're good at something, and all of a sudden, you know, it ends, and you realize the hard way that you were actually never really, talented, rather just lucky. It's a difficult pill to swallow for anybody, man, woman, anybody. And I had to start over. I started from scratch. And I was surrounded in that starting over process by what I call the H plus W plus P. And that's those that were hoping, wishing, and praying. And that became ultimately the strategy for many, that when all of a sudden the thing you did every day doesn't work anymore, it's the who moved my cheese theory. You're the mouse that, finds that big block of cheese, and every day and you go and you nibble on the cheese and it's great and you love it. And one day the cheese is gone, but you continue to go back to that same place every day thinking that that's, that it's going to come back. You start hoping, wishing, and praying. And after a couple of years of trading, I never really, I started to understand ultimately that I was highly uneducated about what I did. I didn't know necessarily what I thought I knew, and when things got tough, the vast majority of people that I knew, my peers, my colleagues, what I saw was failure. What I saw was everybody leaving the business and looking for the next, the next thing. And I actually enjoyed what I did. I actually enjoyed trading. There was something about it that I found, very, very, outside of the financial side of it, which I think is what really drives most people. I found it a sense of accomplishment, when a trade worked out well, or when I had an idea and it became a reality, and I managed it through. I found it to be somewhat rewarding, and there was a part of me that loved what I did. But I knew that if I was going to continue to do it, I needed to find a new identity, and I needed to develop a methodology from which I could call myself a professional. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do, because when you think you know how to do something and then all of a sudden you have to retrain your brain to do it a different way, or you're hardwired in a certain way, it is a very, very, very difficult experience. Now I want to talk about the process, because in my years of working with other traders or people that aspire to trade successfully, and I've worked with various walks of life, people that are in their second career, people that are retired, people are in their third, fourth, fifth career. I've worked with young college age people. So I really have run the spectrum of types of people that I've worked with, high net worth to struggling to make a living, and they have a $5,000 brokerage account and they're trying to make it work. So I really have kind of worked with all sorts of people. So I understand that learning process. And I'm not necessarily going to read you bullet for bullet. You can see my screen and you can certainly read for yourself. But for me, again, this is my story. And I think that, like I said, if I can get one thing across that makes you realize that, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe I need to think about what I do and how I do it. Well, effectively I've done my job, and I think I've done it actually really well, because trading is a thinking person's business. Regardless of your approach, you're a technician, you're a fundamental investor, you're a fib trader, a wave trader, whatever it is your thing. Be great at it and spend a lot of time learning and understanding it. So I went through the typical learning or reinventing myself process, and I read the books, and I consumed the literature, and I took the courses, and I learned the theories and the methodologies and the systems and the processes, and as much as I could consume, I consumed, because I thought that was naturally what you had to do. You had to read the Encyclopedia of Technical Analysis, and you had to learn about Leonardo Fibonacci and W.D. Gann and all these very sophisticated mathematicians that had all this information that I was digesting and consuming as much as possible. I went looking for the Holy Grail. I went looking for the website that would make me rich. I went looking for the newsletter that would make me rich. I went looking for the thing that would just make this business easy for me. And I realized, and again, this is common. I think this is more human psychology than it is anything else. This is what people do. I realized at some point that if I was going to make it work, and this was really more based on my personality, that trading was never going to be easy. It's not an easy business. Whether you're a day trader, a swing trader, an investor, or whatever it is, however it is you classify yourself, or whatever asset class you even trade, options, equities, Forex, whatever your slice is, none of it's easy. But I also realized that I had to have an approach that was functional and simple, because the amount of information that was flowing through my brain caused me to overthink, rethink, double think, second guess everything I did. Should I buy it? Well, and I would go through a laundry list of reasons of why I should or shouldn't do something. And I wound up just overthinking everything to the point where I couldn't even think straight anymore. So I realized that I had to make this simple for myself. And somebody said it to me best. And I think it's just there's such brilliance in the simplicity of it: up, down, and sideways. Stocks can only do one of three things. They can go up, they can go down, and they can go sideways. And I know that that is such a trivial way to explain things, especially when we spend so much time going through the nuances of, you know, all the various forms of trading, whether it's chart patterns or waves or, you know, support and resistance or whatever it may be. It's very easy to get lost in all that information to the point where you forget, you know, about up or down or sideways. And there were so many times in my career personally where I would actually be on the right side of the trade, and I guarantee if I was standing in front of all of you in a live room and I'd say, you know, how many times have you been on the right side of the trade but lost money? I would bet, you know, I would be willing to guess that the vast majority of the people, because they always do, and I'm no different, you know, I found myself, like, I overcomplicated it to the point where I was actually on the right side of the trade and still found a way to lose money. And that was just mind-blowing to me because I made it way too hard. Every little, you know, pop, drop, candlestick, topping tail, bottoming tail, it made me just second guess everything I did. So I went through a process of discovery, and it really was, you know, getting in touch with who I am, what made me tick, the things that I was good at, you know, my personality cues, you know, the things that made me me. And I know that that's a tough process for a lot of people to go through, but it is a necessary process. You know, good traders, you know, most people classify someone as a successful trader strictly by the amount of money they make, which is actually 150% wrong, because your product, your dollar sign, you know, your profit is just a function of the risk you're willing to take. It's not necessarily a benchmark of success or talent, in my opinion. Although people like to equate, you know, success with some sort of, you know, dollar. But it really is based on, you know, the people, in my opinion, that are successful at trading are people that have longevity. Find me a trader that has 15, 20, 25 years of experience, chances are pretty good you're going to find a relatively successful trader, because they've been able to get to that point. That's the point that you all should covet. That's the point that that's what I wanted. That's if you were to ask me, you know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, what is it you want? I wanted to tell you, I want to be doing this in 15 years. And the key for me wasn't how much money I'm going to make, you know, this week or this month. The key for me was how am I going to get to 15 years. So I knew that I had to build myself an approach to trading that was very much, you know, functional for who I was as an individual. And I'm a big believer in, because I've seen it. And again, I know all the methodologies. I know all the trading strategies, and I know all the theories, and, you know, I've spent my time doing my due diligence on my business. But I will tell you that the thing that I know for certain is that this business is 20% playbook, you know, the X's and O's, where to buy, where to sell, and the strategy, and 80% of it is what goes on in between your ears, how you think, the way you rationalize, the way you control your, you know, your fears, and your ability, your greed, because those, you know, those are the things that will get you to, you know, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 30 years from now. Where people lose money is because they don't understand basic concepts. And as much as I am a stout believer in trading education, because I'm living proof that education works, I am, like I said, I am, a walking example of somebody that was 1.5 feet out the door from the entire business, from just throwing in the towel and giving it up, to somebody that was able to not only turn it around on a personal level, but then able to leverage my skill set and my knowledge to a larger business. And I'm very fortunate in that regard, but I do know that some basic concepts really did get me there. And again, I'm not going to spend my time here because it is limited going into each specific bullet point, but understanding time frame analysis and knowing what time frames to operate from, respective to what it is you want to accomplish. I know plenty of traders that spend their time on the equity side looking at daily charts, and then the market opens and all of a sudden they're looking at 1-minute charts and 5-minute charts and all these really microscopic time periods, and they're lost in it. They're lost in their time frames. So having an approach and understanding what time frame you live in, like I just mentioned, the trader identity, being in touch with who you are, how you are going to approach the market, having a sound plan. So anyway, the last bullet point I wanted to go over was quality over quantity, and it's an obstacle that a lot of people face, is that they, those that are active in the business, they spend a lot of time trading. And I learned again just a simple concept that it wasn't the quantity of trades that make that you make, it's the quality of the trades. So what I did was, for me, as part of my discovery process, I did a lot less, and I recognized that the vast majority of the time that I spent trading was actually not trading. Whereas in my prior life, when I first started, all I did was trade. And maybe, again, it was a different time and a different place, and there certainly was different opportunities that presented themselves. But the reality, like I said, the reality of it is that I did a lot less, and I tried to make the things that I did really reflective of what I wanted to accomplish. So picking good setups, good situational ideas over necessarily over trading. So I want to address some of my problems. Problem number 1 and 2 is the lack of structure, rules, and objectivity. These are some of the things that I faced in this journey, is that I recognized that I didn't have good structure, I didn't have rules, and I didn't have good objectivity in my approach. I needed to solve those problems. So I started tracking everything I did. I was meticulous about documenting, spreadsheeting, getting myself organized, following my trades, really mastering ultimately what I'll get into is understanding risk, which is what we do as traders. I actually fancy myself and the students that I teach as risk analysts, not necessarily traders. I know we all call ourselves that because we think that that's what we do, but a good trader ultimately spends his time understanding and watching his risk, not necessarily anything else. And I got myself organized. And one of the other problems that I faced was that I was always looking for big trades. I was always looking for that big trade that was going to be the the trophy in my trophy case. And I stopped doing it. Rather than look for trades that would yield huge gains, I started looking for trades that I thought would be what I considered easy money. And I stopped going after the big counter trend trades, the picking the bottoms and the picking the tops. And I started looking for trades that had the wind at my back. And like I tell people, would you rather be in a sailboat that has a good tailwind or a wind coming at you? And that's what I did. I spent a lot of my time going after the wrong situations because I was enamored to try to make big money. Number 3, I realized that I didn't like losing. And that might seem like a fairly silly thing to say because who likes losing, but I didn't. It really bothered me. And it was I think that it was, if not the biggest step that I took in my, ultimately the re-engineering of myself. I recognized that if I continued to get as frustrated with losing as I was, that I was going to ruin myself. And I learned to embrace, my losses, because ultimately you have no choice. There is no infallible method. You're going to lose money. You're going to go through slumps. You're going to go through losing periods. Trades that you think will work will not work. It's just the nature of the beast. And if you can't accept that, you're ultimately doomed before you even start. Accepting the fact that losing is a part of making is, what the little nuance that can separate bad from good and sometimes even good from great. And anybody that tells you that they like losing or that, I think is a liar. Losing it sucks. Losing money is not a good experience, but you have to embrace the fact that it is a part of what we do, and you, again, it has to be a very, very important part of what we do. I always thought that in order to make money, that you had to go after these ridiculously hard trades. And a lot of my trades, in hindsight, looking back and evaluating a lot of the things that I did, I always went after the hard money. So the solution is that I took all of this stuff in and I built a trading style that I knew worked for me. And again, I highlight me because this is my story. And like I said, if you can kind of take little bits and pieces and put it into your own, your own world, then that's fantastic. Then you've accomplished a ton in this webinar. But I knew that what I wanted to do, it had to be simple, and it had to be scalable, meaning that there had to be room for growth in the future. It would be, it's like I said, simple in its core, but only effective if it's followed, like a diet, right? Diets are easy on paper, but then you have to keep to them, and that's where people kind of run amok. So let's see here. Lastly, too much information, too many ideas. I used to spend hours at night, and I would come up with a list of 50 or 60 or 80 names, and it was just, it was an overload for me. Like I say to most of my students and most of the people that I've worked with, you're one person, you have one brain and two eyes and two hands. How much can you really handle? How much do you really want to handle? So I learned that, for me, having a very simple, effective watch list was a big part of what I wanted to do. And game planning, including market direction, quantity ideas, and was driven by risk. So my trading ideas, again, I found a lot less in terms of quantity, but really focused on quality. I tried to stay with trend, not go against trend, which I found was a major, major, major help. And I was able to actually recognize, when to sit out of the market. And again, a lot of that goes back to time frame analysis and some of the technical subtleties that I know and then I teach. But most of what I do is driven by risk. And I built a product called Off the Charts. And Off the Charts is something. It is my baby without being a physical person. And it's a nightly trade ideas newsletter, and it's driven by me, and it's produced by me, and it's really built for swing traders. But I know that there's a ton of people that use my trading ideas for day trades. They like the breakouts, and they trade them on one given day. And that's fine. It's taking somebody's analysis and somebody's work and then applying it so that you're using it effectively for for yourself. So there's really no specific person. The goal here is that I put forward compelling low-risk trades, the low-hanging fruit, things that have good tailwind, they have trend, they have direction, they have identifiable entry and exit spots, and we can use, or I use, a process by which I suggest, profit areas. So I'm basically giving you, the entry strategy, the risk, as well as the potential target or upside, and it does have a very, defined rule-based approach. It's very flexible with market direction, and, people say to me, well, how does it do? Well, it's not a model portfolio. It's ideas. And I know various people that run it like a model portfolio. I know various people that day trade some of them and not others. I know some people that take some of the ideas but not others, because not all traders are built the same. Some traders will focus on momentum, high beta names, while other traders may focus on, you know, lower price or slower, you know, less frenetic movement. Again, it's a question of your own risk profile, to which I really don't know. And if there was, you know, a general rule of thumb that I always tell people is that with, you know, the newsletter or my ideas, you're going to get 1/3 winners, 1/3 will never even take place, meaning I'll suggest an entry, but that trade will never actually, you know, come to fruition. And 1/3 of them will ultimately be for losses or break even. This is a real trading product designed by a real trader. And just to give you a sample, and this is ultimately, this product is the result of the years that I spent, you know, recreating my identity, things that I started doing, ideas that I started, you know, taking. And it is designed ultimately for a trader that has a holding period of longer than 5 minutes. But again, a lot of traders, like I said, will use it for their own benefits in their own ways. So I have lots of ideas that are suggested, and with each idea, again, you can see to the left, long ideas, short ideas, you know, and defined entry, stops, target prices, you know, and every night I update it and I show you where the position is, and if there's any reason to annotate the chart, I will show you. This is, I guess, yesterday's off the charts. So this was the table of ideas, the trade ideas, and you can kind of see we had, you know, 2 long ideas. We added yesterday CLF and Under Armour, and we have a couple of, you know, we have a handful of short ideas. So it's consumable. I want this product, this experience, to be not only a earning experience where you can use it to, you know, to make money, but you can learn from it. So it has multiple functions. So when people say to me, "Wow, what's your portfolio up or down?" Well, it's really not, because ultimately it's not run like that. Do I take every trade? Well, you know, I'm in most of these trades. We'll say it that way. And again, this is an example of what my game plan looks like. So I basically turned my strategy, my identity, my approach into a product that others could use for their own benefit in the way they felt worked best for them. This was a trade from a couple days ago, and you can see at the bottom in the text, I annotate every couple of days. On July 29th, you know, I put this trade, this was a short setup in Delta, and I annotate it as the days go on, and as the trade begins to evolve. We move our stops up and down relative to positions moving. So I try to keep current with whatever's happening. Here's an example of a trade suggested in Netflix. Again, on the left, you can see the entry, the stop, and the target. And on the right, the outcome. Now, this is obviously a good example of a trade that worked for us. Here's an example on the left. Again, the setup as it went into the newsletter, and then the resulting, you know, trade thereafter. And again, another profitable trade. But there are, like I said, losers, and I want to make sure that everybody's, you know, I'm not trying to tell you that these trade ideas are all going to work, because they're not. But the idea is that the ones that don't work are the most important ones. The ones that you lose money in, the trade ideas that don't pan out the way you think, are actually the most important ones, because those are the ones that you have to live and die by your rule-based system. Like I said, 1/3 winners and 1/3 will be break-even or small losses, and those are the ones that will keep you going, so that you will see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, because you're not going to have massive blow-ups. And the one common ground between all traders that don't make it is they all blow up. So I'm not here to tell you that there's some infallible way of trading, and all the ideas that I look at and they're all good. They're not. That would be just an utter sham and a lie, because if anybody has a brain in their head, you would know that that just doesn't exist. So here's an example of a long idea we suggested in Coors. You know, we kind of identify the risk-reward scenario and the entry strategy and why. And on the right, you can see the outcome to that trade. Again, another trade idea in SPLK, and again, the outcome to the right. So, you know, just a very, very functional, idea-driven product that is not beholden to any one sector or type of trade. You will see trades recommended in here that are, you know, $10 in price, and you will see trades recommended in here that are $600 in price. Currently, I actually have a position in CMG. So again, this is kind of the idea. This is a CF trade, again, another loser. And I think that it's, actually more important, like I said, to show you the trades that don't work than the ones that do work. And this is really, this product was launched back in October of 2013, and we've had some really, really, amazing feedback and success with it. And a lot of traders just find it a very simple, functional, way to help them. It's just a tool. It's an aid. It comes primarily from my brain. So you're getting sort of my approach as to, what I think is worthwhile. And again, there's maybe, like I said, it ebbs and flows with the market. So it's sometimes you're going to see heavily weighted long. For the better part of this year, we've been, vast majority of our trade ideas have been long. Why? Because the market's been trending higher. As of late, we've we've gotten pretty much out of all the longs and moved, into a little bit more, a couple more tactical shorts. But like I say, there are times where you have lots of ideas on the product, and there are times where it contracts. And I ultimately let the market dictate, what we do. I don't tell people that I'm going to put new trade ideas in here every day, because I won't. Sometimes we'll go a week and you'll see maybe one new idea, just because if I don't see it and I don't, I'm just not going to suggest it. So I let the market dictate what it is I do and how I suggest these opportunities. I know that I had some computer issues, and again, I really apologize. It's actually embarrassing, but I'll have to get somebody to help me with that later. I wanted to, as a special offer to you guys, I wanted to put it out there that I'm offering 1 month free of the product. But note that it's a $300 annual product. We're offering it 13 months for $300, and this offer is only valid by giving us a call. Calling T3 Live, and the numbers are listed there. So, like I said, I'm a real trader. I'm a real person. My goal with this webinar was not to come in here and necessarily teach you about a strategy or a technique or a tactic, because I do that in other places, but really to tell you that, if you're not getting the results you desire, and I think this sums it up best, there's a bridge, right? And you're on one side, and you're looking across the water to the island, and you want to be on that island, but you just can't get yourself to that island. There is a bridge to that island, but you have to be very honest and realistic with yourself about what is it that separates you from getting to the place that you want to go. And if I give myself credit for anything, it's not that I'm a good trader or anything fantastic, or I've developed something new or novel or groundbreaking by any stretch. No, it's not. It's just, it's effective, it's simple, it's driven by risk and understanding risk. It's driven by trying to trade stocks that have good tailwind and, like I said, are low-hanging fruit. It's amazing to me that traders typically will always climb to the top of the apple tree to try to get the apple. They make it, we as people make it so hard, and it doesn't need to be that hard. But again, it's only as good as your discipline and your dedication to what it is you're trying to accomplish. And again, if I give anybody, and I tell this to all my students, if I put anything out there, it's if you want to set a goal for yourself, ask yourself the question, what is this going to look like for me in 5 years or 10 years? Think about that. I think we as traders get so hung up on what's happening now or tomorrow, or that 5 years is like it's an eternity away. Well, if you don't think about what your existence as a trader is going to be like in 5 years and how you're going to get to 5 years, the odds are you may not get there. So, that's my utter plea to those of you that are, sitting here and you're trying to consume all this wonderful information throughout the course of today. And there has been some amazing, like I said, amazing pieces of knowledge that have been shared. But it's just a question of, regardless of the approach, making it functional for you. We're not all created equal, and we don't have the same risk profile, and we don't all trade the same way or the same thing. But being able to clearly state, this is what I do, this is how I make my living, this is how I approach the markets, this is why I am going to be great in 5 years or 10 years, is a very, very, is my challenge to everybody. And like I said, this off the charts is, to me, it's my pet project, and the thing that I really, ultimately, was initially my my resurrection, for lack of a better word. So I'm going to wrap it there. I think that I've hit my wall in terms of time.
Great. Thank you, Evan. Once again, that was Evan Lazarus from T3 Live.